The next track is called Quality Engineering, Reconciling Faster Development with User Expectations. Welcome, Darrel, to the stage. Darrel is from New Orleans and is the Solutions Engineer Manager at Mabel, a low-code quality engineering platform and an Abstracta partner. Welcome, Darrel.
Thank you, Paz. Thank you, everyone. Buen dia. It's so nice to be with people again after so many years in a pandemic. I was just out there. I saw crowds of people all talking to one another, and it was a beautiful thing. So I appreciate all the folks who are coming in now. I'm sorry to interrupt your conversations with a talk. My name is Darrel. I've worked in tech for over 20 years. I have little hair left after it, but it's been a lot of fun. I love software testing. I did not start my career in software testing. I started it working at an internet provider, maintaining lots of Solaris boxes and modem banks, and then stayed in back-end and infra for a little while. And a friend reached out to me and said, hey, I'm hiring a tester. Do you want to come work with me? I said, I don't even know what that is. And she said, I'll teach you. And so that's how I ended up in testing. But more than anything, I really enjoy things that work properly, whether that is software or anything else. So jumping in, I have a lot of content, so I'm going to talk really fast. I hope that's okay. In tech, right, everything changes constantly. In the last maybe 10 years, the word transformation has been spoken a lot, right? Agile transformation, digital transformation, DevOps, technology, anything anyone can put in front of transformation, we've said it. And I think one of the new terms that we're seeing come to market is quality engineering. And so the main theme for my talk today is kind of a little bit about what quality engineering might be. I think a lot of us are still figuring it out, and kind of what it means. So historically, and I think still today, we're trying to figure out how to get software, how to get value into our users' hands as quickly as possible and in the nicest way as possible. DevOps did wonderful things for developers and ops teams. We're able to spin up infrastructure like that. We don't have to wait for physical servers to be shipped to us anymore. We don't have to manually build software. We don't have to FTP up software onto a server anymore at the worst. So lots of great things happened. QA, some say QA is a bottleneck. I think we're just very attentive to the things that we do. And so what you kind of see sometimes is everything else has sped up until we get into the testing phase, and then things slow down for a wide variety of reasons. And then it slows down that trickle of value that's getting out to our customers. Ideally, we'll have this nice continuum of change coming in, testing happening, value getting out, and it just flows. Sounds lovely, really hard to do. I listen to a lot of other talks. I go to a lot of conferences. I read a lot. And I read a lot about quality engineering lately because it's kind of the next big thing, we're told. And I've come to this disposition that I think quality engineering is more of a state of being. I think it's when we take a lot of what people call best practices and put those into place, things we've been hearing for the last 10, 15 years. Once you start doing those things and you do them well and you do them iteratively, you kind of arrive to this place where all of a sudden, instead of everyone doing this, things start happening like this. I think that's what quality engineering is. But it's not just process, it's not just tooling. People are behind this. People in teams, and those people in teams have behaviors. Those people in teams have to adhere to process, hopefully process that is capable of changing and adapting. And there's culture behind this. We talk about DevOps culture, but there's also the culture that is embedded in the teams who we work with and how we talk about software, how we talk about quality. And all of these things are related to quality engineering. In companies where testing as a discipline, testers as people, are valued, we see higher customer satisfaction in the applications that they use. This isn't teams that are really good at automation. These are teams that are really good at delivering quality customer experiences. Doesn't have to be automation, doesn't have to be manual testing. Hopefully it's all of the above. But it's pretty remarkable. And I think that those of us who are testers, we enjoy feeling valued, and we enjoy when people appreciate our work. And I think that shows up in the products that we build as well. This is one of my favorite stats that I came across a few years ago. 32% of customers will leave a brand after a single experience. I'm one of those people, admittedly. It's important, right? Lots of times we have different applications that we have various levels of dependency on, right? I can open up my phone, I can use Twitter. If Twitter doesn't work one day, I'm fine. My mom has a pacemaker. It's connected to a mobile network that reports back everything to her doctor. If that breaks, that's a big deal. So I'm really glad they have people testing these things. So thinking about quality assurance, what moving to quality engineering might look like, I think part of it is making sure that we're building quality in throughout our software production process. So that's everything from how we talk about quality to how we practice the disciplines surrounding that we do, whether that's performance testing, whether that's user testing, right? Just people talking to people. Ensuring quality across the customer experience. This is how maybe one day I will not be one of those 32% of users who leaves for another product. Ensuring quality across the customer experience is really, really important. People interact with our products through various interfaces. And some of those interfaces are better quality than others. Getting consistency there, I think, is really important to focus on, and especially validating functional and non-functional attributes. I know there's a really great performance testing community here. Before this, there was the Whopper, and there are a number of talks happening around performance testing as well. This is also things like accessibility testing. In the United States, and in other countries as well, there are now laws that apply to software companies. So if your application isn't accessible based on certain standards, you can be fined. And this is happening more and more frequently now. So there's also a business reason, not just an altruistic one, to focus on this. And using data to drive continuous improvement. This is really hard for some people, and I think one of the problems is that, at least in modern software companies, I think some of us are drowning in data. We have a ton of data at our fingertips. We don't really know what to do with it all sometimes. One of my favorite kinds of tools are the ones that track a user's journey through our application. And when I see teams implement something like that, it's this wow moment, because all of the user stories and requirements that we write, then you start looking at what people are actually doing in your software. It's usually not what we think it is. And I think being able to bring that awareness to the way that we practice our craft is really important. It helps us do a better job. This is a model that my company came up with. And I don't exactly like the graphic very much, because I think this looks like a linear growth chart, and I think of this as more like a giant Venn diagram where we have to do all of these things. We have to sprinkle sugar everywhere. So even though testing manually is at the bottom of this list, it's more like this is table stakes. We have to be doing manual testing. Automation does not make manual testing go away. Manual testing is really important for things like experiential. evaluation of our software. It's very important. Paul over here was telling me about an experience he had trying to scroll through a mobile emulator, and there was tremendous lag in that action, and then it crashed. I don't know if that would have happened if we were automating that. Maybe it would have worked at that layer. But when a user is actually doing it through a different kind of interface, who knows what can happen? We have to know these things. We do need automation. Automation helps us do the dumb stuff faster. People have amazing brains. We have amazing experiences. We all use software every day. I see phones everywhere in this room right now in people's hands. And we have to make sure that all of that stuff works too. Once we get kind of the functional stuff and the table stakes, we also have to make sure that that's integrated throughout the process. So for years, right, I've been fortunate enough to work in companies where developers generally have good unit testing discipline. That's great. Unit tests can't find everything. And then I've been on teams where, we have a ton of manual test cases. We got this fleet of manual testers, and they're doing this stuff iteratively. But then there's not enough time left over to just take a step back, look at this holistically, and say, I think this feels good. I think our customers might like this. It takes time, it takes some space to be able to have that. And then non-functional quality, right? I just mentioned accessibility. There's performance, all sorts of things. These things matter because it leads to what the actual experience is. I can click a button and make something do something, but the way that that something happens is also very important. And then using all of the data that we've gathered through various systems and using that to inform how our process, how our approach might change. Some teams I've worked on, they sort of define like a theme for a particular quarter, like, hey, this quarter we're going to focus mostly on this. We're still going to do this other stuff. And they decide that based on the data that is brought to them. And I think when you do these various things, and the amount of each that you do is going to be different for any context that you work in, right? Applications do different things. Software is a great big world. So knowing your context, I think, is also very, very important. So, having said all of that, where are you? Where are we collectively, but individually in our own companies? This says start with an assessment. I think another way of saying that is start with a conversation. We have to talk to one another to understand what each other's challenges are. What do we think is going well? What do we think needs improvement? Do you see any patterns? So problems, right? They can't really be solved until we quantify them. I see problems everywhere. I'm a tester. And, they're not all very important. Some make me more angry than others, naturally. But knowing how angry I get, right, is part of that quantification. Understanding your team's core strengths. Our companies are made up of all kinds of different people who come from different backgrounds. It's a beautiful thing. I think one of the things I really appreciated about Eric's keynote earlier, if you were here, was making sure to focus on things that people do well and not necessarily focusing on all the bad things that they might do, things they're weaker at. People have strengths, and all those strengths are very diverse and different. So as managers, I think our role is to identify, what's the best work that someone could possibly do, and then how do we extract that? How do we get them in a place where they can do their best work, where they feel empowered to do that? And then there's our tech stacks. Does your tech support your goals? When I first started doing automation, I think when a lot of us started doing automation, we were using something like Selenium. Great, but it can't do everything. And so sometimes when we want to expand our horizons, we have to start identifying other methods and other approaches in order to meet the requirements that we need to, build good software. And so then you have to figure out, thinking about all of these things, right, we're all talking, where can we make an impact? So thinking about things that we can do more tangibly, quality, right? Quality, we can all, as testers, we can all be very passionate. We can have the best intentions, but if our organizations and the companies that we work in don't support this, it might not work. So, and I think that's been something that I've seen improve dramatically, especially over the last few years. Because we've solved so many other problems that testing and quality in general is kind of now one of the final frontiers to really realizing like the true vision of what DevOps culture could be. We have to make sure that the things that we're doing, of course, are manageable, maintainable, and most importantly, meaningful. So, as teams, right, we should be talking about testing and quality. We should be talking about how we want to test things and how we think risk might be perceived before anybody starts writing code. We should be doing this in the design phase. We need to make sure that everyone who has some sort of stake in the product that we're delivering has a seat at the table. And some of that requires teams to open up a bit more. This isn't just a product manager dictating, this isn't just a developer dictating. These are conversations that we all have to have. Please, devs, do unit testing. Please. We have to make sure that we're testing the right things, and the right things might be different at different times. So, business risk, right? Naturally, we want to do that. But more importantly, we really want to focus on the customer experience. We need to preserve and protect our brands as companies as well, right? 32% of people leave after a single bad experience. One of the nice things about certain tools is that it makes it fast, to build up test cases, manual or automated. It's great. Also makes it really easy to get rid of them when they're no longer useful. So don't just keep your test suites and everything just building up and building up and building up. Focus on what's actually valuable. Maintenance is terrible. It eats us alive. Automated testing. Automated, right, we've been talking about shift left for a few years. I think sometimes forgetting that our customers are over here on the right. So we need to make sure that not only are we testing early and often, but we're also testing throughout production as well. Different infrastructures host our applications at different times. So it's not just the application code that impacts quality, but also how we host and serve that too. Making sure that we can do all of this efficiently is really important. This is why I feel sad when I talk to people who are so laser focused on requirements and they think that's the only thing that exists. Yes, we need to make sure that the requirements of the applications and products that we design, but there is more. I heard a noise, I thought it was this thing. And of course, right, making sure that we're testing throughout the dev cycle. Monitoring, oh my gosh, we can learn so much. I worked with a customer who was having an issue in a very, very, very large company. Lots of microservices, lots of shared components across teams. They were having an issue with just having these bugs get out to production with a really large blast radius. And so the first solution to that was every time they would have a release, they would get maybe 50, 60 people on a conference call together. It's good to circle the wagon sometimes, but someone then did the math on, well, how much does this phone call cost? Because there are some pretty important people on this call, right? And it was $1 million phone call that they had every couple of weeks. And so they said, well, clearly we need to solve this in a different way. So lots of considerations to think of. Non-functional quality. I love that this is kind of having its moment right now. At the last, I don't know, maybe 4 conferences or so that I've been to, there have been more talks around performance and accessibility. There are more vendors in the expo rooms talking about performance. It's wonderful, right? We have so many horizons to explore. get rid of tests that are inefficient, find new ways to approach problems, and make sure that accessibility isn't something that you kind of test after, right? I think accessibility and performance are going to be one of those, well, performance already is, but accessibility is going to be one of those things that we're going to start thinking about earlier and more often in the dev cycle as well. Because again, businesses don't like to get sued, and while it's wonderful to have accessible products and accessible websites from an altruistic perspective, it's money that really makes the businesses start supporting these kinds of initiatives. So honestly, as testers, sometimes it's our job to make sure that the business knows what risk really means. Oh gosh. I'm not going to read all of these. I want to leave time for questions. But continuous improvement, right? Using data in the right ways. Data is a dangerous thing. It can be misinterpreted. It can be misapplied. This is why we can't do this in isolation. You can't just have your one data analyst over here analyzing everything and then producing something. You end up with bias. So we have to make sure that there is diversity in the data and there's diversity in the interpretation of the data. I think that's really the biggest takeaway from over here. And if we do all of these things, another phrase we've been hearing a lot, right, is cultures of quality. It sounds so nice and warm and fuzzy. And they are. But ultimately, if we start taking a more multidisciplinary view or a wider perspective on quality, and you start involving more people, again, not just engineers, but business folks too, all of a sudden people start appreciating things a little bit more. And it's a conversation that has to continue. It never ends. And hopefully one day we can all get to a little model like this where we're just writing code and writing features and pushing them out and they work and our customers love us and they're happy and they become advocates for our products. And opportunities abound. So again, kind of summing it up, right? Try to understand where you are, but also where you need to go. People, process, and technology, we've all got to get there together. If you need to augment your tech stack, if you need to bring in other tools, other different kind of analytics products, right? Figure that out, talk about it. Data actually does bring perspective. Embrace new opportunities for collaboration. Look at all the people in this room. I loved seeing everyone out there just talking. It's one of the best things we can do to influence quality in our products. Just talk. Get the whole team involved. Talk before you do anything, please. So key takeaways, quality engineering is evolutionary, it's multidisciplinary, it's not just requirements, it's not just stories and making sure all of these things work, it's not just acceptance testing. We have to focus on customer experience, right? We don't decide if we have a high quality product, our customers do. And another little analogy or cliche here, right? Testing is a team sport is one. I think if that were true, I do. But quality engineering really is the Olympics. It takes a bigger team. It takes folks practicing different arts, different practices, and you put it all together, and you get a nice little culture of quality. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you so much, Darrel. Now we have 5 minutes for questions. Anyone want to go first? Want to volunteer? Don't be shy.
Creo que le podemos preguntar en español. Right?
También, sí.
Anyone? Come on.
I have a question.
There we go.
Pregúntame.
As a quality engineer, how do you have any advice on how to influence and try to help in this idea of having the whole team involved in quality that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think, not to sound a little repetitive, but start talking to people who are around you and find people who are interested or concerned in your midst across teams. Those people can help be, I say, it's nice to be a soloist, if you're singing, but a chorus really makes a bigger impact. So the more advocates that you can find around you who share a vision of what something better could look like, I think can really, really help. It's hard to do it alone, and I think that's why collaboration is so important, and collaboration can mean lots of things. But I think being able to identify people around you throughout your organizations who also care about how customers experience our applications, find your family in that regard, and good things will happen.
Thank you.
Hola. En español o en inglés. In the graph that you show about the quality maturity, like manual in this one, in which of these state of phases you can start thinking in non-functional attributes like performance, security, accessibility. Mm-hmm. Where do you have to stay to start thinking these kind of things?
I think that, well, just in general. In general, it depends on your context, right? Sometimes certain things have a higher priority. If I work in healthcare or insurance or banking, at least in the United States, these are regulated industries where there are specific laws that have to be followed. And so in that case, you're sort of forced to start talking about some of those attributes as well. If that's not the case, I think sometimes it just takes someone to start the conversation. Sometimes it takes someone to make an observation, right? And they're like, hey, I noticed that the app seems kind of chuggy, or it's a little slow. Anybody know why? So, QA, question asker, right? Sometimes you just have to start asking questions. And then other people start, like, oh, you bring awareness to others. And that, I think, is how you start then building some consensus to start approaching new problems, right? Because again, it's hard if you're just one person. And some of us are, right? Some of us are teams of one. I've been a team of one many times. And in that case, right, then you really have to kind of take that on yourself. But you have to be brave sometimes and start some hard conversations. But again, I think one thing that can really help there is data, right? How can you get something that other people trust that might be outside of you to help substantiate the case? Hope that helps.
And requirements.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Anyone? Want to go again, Fede, maybe? No? Okay. Okay,
right.
Then we will finish up this track. Again, thank you so much, Darrel, for participating in the first edition of the Quality Sense Conference.
Yeah, many thanks to Abstracta as well. This event is wonderful. It really is so great to see so many people, both in this room, the other room as well. What a great conference. It's so good to be here with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.